Hey, good morning. This is Bishop Robert Jones, Rivers of Living Water Cathedral, here in Fremont at 604 Holland Street. I'm addressing you today from our office. God bless you all. So may God bless and keep you through this challenging time. And remember the words of the Lord that says to us that God is with us. He will not leave us. It says if God be with us, then what or who can be against us? We are trying to follow the mandates from the government, from the federal government, from the state government, from the local government, and not have large gatherings. So as many churches and places are doing, I am joining with them, and we are addressing you from our office. The thing I want to deal with on today is fear. Fear. There is a good fear that really deals with reverence. But I want to talk about another kind of fear that is gripping the world. And that is this fear of torment. Now, fear is an unpleasant, strong emotion caused by perceived danger, uncontrollable anxiety over things or events. Fear is fright, fear is panic. But we know that the scripture tells us that God did not give us the spirit of fear. In fact, 2 Timothy 1:7 reminds us, God did not or hath not given us the spirit of fear. Now the scripture used the word spirit. So we see here this kind of fear is a spirit, a bad, tormenting spirit. For the scripture says here that God hath not given us that spirit, that tormenting spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. This is what the scripture reminds us, to be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. So we live in him, we live in him, we move in him, we have our being. You see, the scripture asks the question. Remember the passages that dealt with Jesus and his disciples or his followers? When Jesus says to his disciples, let us go over to the other side. We find those passages of this story in both Matthew's and also in Mark. Matthew's the 8th chapter, Mark the 4th chapter, when Jesus says to his disciples, boys, let's go to the other side. And as they, in fact, let me read that to you. Matthew's 8 and Oh, let's begin here at let's begin at the 23rd verse. And when Jesus was entered into a ship, his disciples followed, and behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea, inasmuch that the ship was covered with waves. But he, Jesus, was asleep. And his disciples came to him and woke him, saying, Lord, save us, we perish. And Jesus awake from his sleep, and said unto them, Why are you so afraid, or why are you fearful? Now, Jesus was in the ship with the disciples. He had already said to the disciples, guys, let's go over to the other side. There was an assignment that Jesus had to do on the other side of the lake. So again, he speaks to his disciples and says, let's go to the other side. Now, in the middle of this journey from one side of the lake to the other side, the Bible tells us that a storm arose, began to batter the ship, and the waves began to cover the ship, and seemingly it was going to overtake this ship. The disciples, the followers, we don't forget that, the followers, the disciples, the believers in and of Jesus seemed to be gripped with fear. Now, maybe I could understand non-followers being gripped, non-believers being gripped with fear, but these were men that had viewed and seen the many operations of Jesus and what Jesus did, how he did it, what he said, how he said it. Now here was Jesus in the ship with them. However, Jesus was resting. The disciples were afraid. They awake Jesus out of his sleep and says to Jesus, don't you care that we're about to perish? Don't you care that this ship is about to go down, that this ship is going to go under? Jesus asked the question to them, hey, why are you so fearful? What are you afraid of? Have you forgotten who I am? Have you forgotten who's on this ship with you? Have you forgotten that? Well, sometimes as believers we can forget who we have committed our life to. We can forget who's steering our life, who's aboard the ship of our life. Jesus had to remind them. So I'm here to remind you believers today, you followers of the Lord, that Jesus is aboard your life's ship. So why are you fearful? Again, the scripture says to us that God has not given to us. The us here, when Timothy wrote this, or Paul wrote this, or to Timothy, he said, why are you fearful? Or, I'm sorry, God hath not given to us the spirit of fear. Fear, in this case, is the property of the enemy, the property of the devil. Oh, by all means, saints of God and brothers and sisters of the Lord, by all means we are wise. We're not foolish. We're not just doing things to tempt God and saying, God can do this, God can do that. No, in this case, we want to be wise in this pandemic time. But we don't want to live our life in panic. We don't want to live our lives in anxiety. We don't want to live our lives in fear. Remember, the scripture says about us that we believers are the light of the world. We're the light. So those that do not walk in light, they are walking in darkness. They would be those that I would think that would be of great fear. But we are not children of fear. Over in the 4th chapter of Mark, let's see, let me get to Mark chapter 4, and we find the same account again. Verse 35 in Mark, the 4th chapter, and it begins this way. And the same day, when evening was come, he said unto them, or his disciples, let us pass. Now look at his words. Let us pass over unto the other side. Look at those words. Let us go over. So when Jesus says, let us go to the other side, nothing was going to prevent him from going to the other side. He did not say, let us attempt to go to the other side. He said, let's go over to the other side. So nothing was going to stop or prevent him from doing the work that he had to do on the other side. Now the devil, he says, I got to prevent Jesus, I got to prevent the disciples from going over to the other side. So he gets into the wind and he causes a great storm, and here is Jesus and his disciples in the middle of their journey. The old saying that we sometimes hear is it seems like we are between the devil and the deep blue sea. Well, in this case, it looked like there they were in the middle of the journey, seemingly too far out to turn around and go back, seemingly too far out to go ahead, but Jesus said, we are going over to the other side. And when they had, let me read on down here. Let's